Mauser, begun as Königliche Waffenschmieden, is a German arms manufacturer. Their line of bolt-action rifles and semi-automatic pistols have been produced since the 1870s for the German armed forces. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Mauser designs were also exported and licensed to a large number of countries which adopted them as military and civilian sporting firearms. The Mauser Model 98 in particular was widely adopted and copied, and is the foundation of many of today's sporting bolt-action rifles. History. Founded as Königliche Waffenschmieden on July 31, 1811 by Friedrich I, originally located partly at Ludwigsburg and partly in Christophsthal, the factory was transferred to Oberndorf in the former Augustine cloister. Andreas Mauser was the master gunsmith there. Of his 7 sons who worked with him there, Peter Paul Mauser showed an outstanding ability to develop methods of operation that were faster and more efficient. His older brother Wilhelm assumed many of his father's duties as he became ill. Early years. Peter Paul Mauser, often referred to as Paul Mauser, was born on June 27, 1838, in Oberndorf am Neckar, Württemberg. His brother Wilhelm was 4 years older. A brother, Franz Mauser, traveled to America in 1853 with his sister and worked at E. Remington and Sons. Peter Paul was conscripted in 1859 as an artilleryman at the Ludwigsburg Arsenal, where he worked as a gunsmith. By December 1859 he had so impressed his superiors that he was placed on inactive military service and assigned to the Royal Factory at Oberndorf. Paul engaged his older brother Wilhelm in working on a new gun system in their spare time after work. Paul was the engineer and designer, but Wilhelm took on the task of manager for their interests with the Oberndorf factory. Paul's first invention was a cannon and its ammunition. His ability to produce both the gun and the ammunition for it was followed during his entire career and made him unique in this ability. Following the success of the Dries needle gun, Zundnadelgewehr, Paul turned his energies to improving on that design and producing a new one. Paul and Wilhelm had separated due to differences during this time. After Paul developed a new turning bolt design, Wilhelm was impressed enough to rejoin the business and succeeded in obtaining the financing to purchase machinery and continue development. While the original needle gun used a pin that pierced the base of the cartridge to ignite the primer in the middle, Mauser soon developed a needle that ignited the charge at the base, a superior design. U.S. patent. Locally, the Dries needle gun had just been adopted, so the brother turned to the Austrian ambassador to try to sell their gun. He forwarded their new gun to Vienna for testing. It was here that American Norris of the Remington Company saw the new Mauser rifle design. In 1867 Norris hired the Mauser brother to go to Lüttich to work on a new design. He also stipulated that patents were to be taken out in his name and that a royalty would be paid to the Mauser brothers for rifles sold. Norris was convinced that he could sell the design to the French to convert their chassepot rifles. The Norris-Mauser patent was taken out in the United States. Remington was outraged at the behavior of Norris and never made an effort to sell the new rifle. Based on the Dries needle gun, he developed a rifle with a turn-bolt mechanism that cocked the gun as it was manipulated by the user. The rifle initially used a firing needle, a later version used a firing pin and a rear ignition cartridge. The rifle was shown to the Austrian War Ministry by Samuel Norris of E. Remington and Sons. Norris believed the design could be adapted to convert chassepot needle guns to fire metallic cartridges. Shortly thereafter, a partnership was formed in Oberndorf between Norris and the Mauser brothers. The partners went to Legion 1867, but when the French government showed no interest in a chassepot conversion, the partnership was dissolved. Paul Mauser returned to Oberndorf in December 1869, and Wilhelm arrived in April 1870. Before leaving Lüttich, the Mausers insisted that he submit the rifle to Royal Prussian School of Riflemanship. The results were impressive and Wilhelm was invited to the arsenal at Spandau. Model M/71. Peter Paul and Wilhelm Mauser continued development of their new rifle in Paul's father-in-law's home. The Mauser rifle was accepted by the Prussian government on December 2, 1871, and was accepted for service until February 14, 1872, after a requested design change to the safety lock. The Mauser brothers received an order for 3,000 rifle sights, but actual production of the rifle was given to government arsenals and large firms. The sights were produced at the Xaver Joch House starting May 1, 1872. After an order for 100,000 rifle sights was received from the Bavarian rifle factory at Amberg, the Mauser brothers began negotiations to purchase the Württemberg Royal Armoury. A delay in the purchase forced them to buy real estate overlooking the Neckar River Valley, where the upper works was built that same year. A house in Oberndorf was also rented to fulfill the Bavarian order. Acquisition of the Königlich Württembergische Uhrfabrik. The Königlich Württembergische Uhrfabrik was acquired on May 23, 1874, after an agreement between the Württemberg government and the Mausers to produce 100,000 Model 71 rifles. The partnership of Mauser Brothers and Company was formed between the Württemberg Vereinsbank of Stuttgart and Paul and Wilhelm Mauser on February 5, 1874. By May 23, 1874, the Mauser partnership had 3 factories in Oberndorf. Wilhelm Mauser suffered from health problems throughout his life, which were aggravated by his frequent business travels. A combination of these led to his death on January 13, 1882. The partnership became a stock company with the name of Waffen Fabrik Mauser on April 1, 1884. The shares held by the Württemberg Vereinsbank and Paul Mauser were sold to Ludwig Loh and Company on December 28, 1887, and Paul Mauser stayed as the technical leader. Ludwig Loh and Company was 50% owner of Fabrique Nationale d'Armes de Guerre, a company formed in 1889 to manufacture Mauser rifles for the Belgian government. Deutsche Waffen und Munitions Fabriken AG, DWM, was formed on November 7, 1896, as a merger of Ludwig Loh and Company AG, Deutsche Metallpatronen-Fabrik AG, Rheinisch-Westphalische Powder Company, and Rottal Hamburg Powder Company. Mauser AG was formed on April 23, 1897. After World War II, DWM was renamed Industriewerke Karlsruhe AG, IWK. Civilian market. Mausers were readily adapted as hunting rifles. In Africa, safari rifles were often made from Mausers. These rifles were often rechambered in larger rounds up to and including .50 caliber, 12.7 mm. The adaptations usually consisted of shortening the foregrip and barrel, rechambering to accommodate popular British rounds, and minor alterations to the action. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, companies that made alterations were generally Commonwealth-based. Several proprietary big game rounds were specifically for hunting large and dangerous game. Today, large and small-bore Mauser-derived rifles are made all over the world for the civilian market and are popular with hunters. Surplus military Mausers, many in mint condition, have also entered the civilian market, to be purchased by collectors and gun owners. A considerable number of surplus Karabiner 98KS were available after World War II, and some were used by Schultz and Larsen in Denmark as the basis for target rifles. Some of these are still in competitive use, although with the benefit of new barrels. The strong following enjoyed by surplus military Mausers is partly a testament to their reliability and quality of manufacture. Additionally, the widespread availability and comparative low cost of surplus military ammunition has served to continue their use by shooting enthusiasts. That being said, vintage surplus ammunition usually requires specialized cleaning regimens to prevent aggressive and rapid metal oxidation caused by corrosive salts, moisture attracting, contained in their priming compounds. Care must be taken to thoroughly and promptly clean and neutralize these salts after firing corrosive ammunition, lest the weapon suffer metal and mechanical damage. The first Western-made handguns introduced into South Asia were made by the Mauser Company, and the term has entered the lexicon in India and the surrounding regions, to mean any heavy pistol. Manufacturers. John Rigby and Company developed 4 distinct rounds for its Mauser Safari big game rifles, .275 Rigby, .350 Rigby, .416 Rigby, and the .450 Rigby. Eskbrhovka manufactures various Mauser 98 variants, the most notable being the CZ550 Safari Magnum, the .375H Magnum, and the .458 Lot. Sig Sauer makes a Mauser M98 rifle chambered in several medium and magnum chamberings and a M98 Safari rifle, chambered in .416 Rigby, .450 Dakota, .458 Lot, and .500 Jeffrey. Zastava Arms manufactures several 98 Mauser variants, the best known of these being the LK-M70 and M85 series, in various popular calibers ranging from .22 to 250 to .458 Winchester Magnum. A number of the LK-M70 slightly modified versions have been widely sold in other countries. Carl Gustaf Sweden National Armory took over the manufacturing of the M94/96 and the famous target rifles CG63 and CG68. Husqvarna Vapen Fabric made M94-96, variant M38, M38-96, and many other civilian variations, Model 46, 46A, 46B, and 46AN, in cal 6.5 x 55 mm, 9 x 57 mm and 9.3 x 62 mm, Model 640, 646 6.5 x 55, 648 8 x 57 is, 649 9.3 x 62, without the thumb notch. They used FN action for later models 640 and 140 series. The crossover model 1640 improved Mauser, over the M96, is a cross between the M98 and M96. They also produced the 1900 actions. Fabrique Nationale de Herstal made a M98 series, the early production being small ring and later large ring of C, early, and H, late, design. The FN actions were also used by Sacco of Finland as their high-power rifles, by Browning on the early medallions, as Husqvarna small ring model 146 and large ring late model 640, and by Kodiak Arms, Connecticut. Many other arms manufacturers used the FN action. Mauser firearms pre-1945. Rifles. Mauser Norris Model 67/69 rifle. Between 1867 and 1869, the Mauser brothers and Samuel Norris developed a single-shot bolt-action rifle. The caliber and number produced are not known. Ludwig Olson wrote that an example had at one time been on display at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. The rifle was patented in Austria by Samuel Norris on December 24, 1867. The bolt head did not rotate, a feature chosen by Paul Mauser to protect the heads of paper cartridges from friction and possible damage while locking the bolt, and to provide a non-rotary seat for the extractor when metallic cartridges were used. An improved version of the rifle used a coil spring wrapped around the firing pin and a safety and a cocking piece attached to the rear of the firing pin. This rifle was shown to the Prussian government, and after some design changes to the safety, was accepted for service as the infantry rifle Model 71 on February 14, 1872. Often considered a close relative of the Chassepot rifle, and borrowing Dry's turning bolt-action lock, still the most innovative features of the new weapon were the work of Peter Paul Mauser. Model 1871 and derivatives. The Mauser Model 1871 was the Mauser brothers' first rifle. It was adopted by the German Empire, except for the Kingdom of Bavaria, as the Gewehr 71 or Infanteriegewehr 71, I.G.Mod.71 was engraved on the rifles. Production began at the Oberndorf factory for the infantry version, which fired a black powder 11 x 60 mm round from a long 850 mm, 33 in, barrel. Shorter versions were introduced with the 700 mm, 28 in, barreled Jaeger and 500 mm, 20 in, cavalry carbine. Slightly modified versions were widely sold to other countries, firing bullets that would today be considered very large, typically 9.5 mm to 11.5 mm. Such large bullets were necessary due to the limitations of black powder, which hindered velocities. Serbia designed an improved version of the Model 71 in 10.15 mm, made in Germany and called the Mauser Milovanov M1878/80. In 1884 an 8-shot tubular magazine was added by Mauser to the Model 7184. The Turkish Model 1887 rifle was the first of a series of rifles produced for the Turkish Army. Its design echoed that of the German Gewehr 7184 service rifle, a bolt-action weapon with a tubular magazine beneath the barrel. The Turkish contract specified that if any other nation ordered Mauser rifles with more advanced technology, that design would be substituted for the Model 1887 to fill the remainder of the Turkish order. This clause was utilized after Belgium adopted the Model 1889 rifle. 8x57 mm INS or JS cartridge. In 1886 the French Army introduced the Lebel Model 1886 rifle, which used a smokeless powder cartridge. Smokeless powder allowed smaller diameter bullets to be propelled at higher velocities, with accuracy to 1000 yards, 910 m, making most other military rifles obsolete. Like the Mauser 7184, its disadvantage was a slow-to-load 8-round tube magazine. The German Army adopted the best features of the Lebel for the G98, also known as the Model 1888 commission rifle, along with a modified Mauser action and a Mannlicher-style box magazine. The Karabiner 88 was the carbine version. Both would be updated in the early 20th century and saw limited use in World War I. The G98 was not actually a Mauser-designed and engineered rifle. The G98 was built for the new 8x57 mm with a 0.318-inch bullet. The I and IS designations are used to differentiate the two bullets used with the same basic cartridge. The actual diameter of the 8.1 mm is 0.318898 inches. Commonly known today as the 8 mm Mauser I, it was used for later Mauser rifle models. This was not a Mauser-designed and engineered cartridge. The 8x57 mm I incorporated the advantages of smokeless powder and higher velocity found in the Lebel. It was rimless, which allowed smoother feeding for both rifles and machine guns. The original bullet had a round nose and was relatively heavy by modern standards but was typical of early smokeless powder small-bore military designs. Several redesigns, including the adoption of the Spitzer bullet of 153 grains weight, later 198 grains weight, led to a change in the rifling groove depth from 0.10 mm to 0.15 mm to solve problems brought about by the greater velocity and the 8x57 mm IS or 8x57 mm JS 8.2 mm or 0.323-inch bullet. This bullet, with a sharp point, and later in the 1930s a boat tail, brought the cartridge to its eventual potency. Only later .323 caliber versions of G98 or converted G88 and G98 rifles could safely fire the larger 8x57 mm JS rounds. The Mauser 8x57 mm JS or JSR, 8.2 mm or 0.323-inch, cartridge cannot safely be fired out of a rifle designed for 8x57 mm I, 8.1 mm or 0.318-inch. The increased pressure from the larger cartridge may cause a catastrophic failure of the firearm. A qualified gunsmith can verify the correct chambering by slugging the barrel. The mark and caliber applied by the proofing house may also be utilized to properly identify the correct caliber of the rifle. The R included in this style of designations indicates a cartridge with a rim, which functions better in some types of rifles, especially drillings, and other types of combination guns. These often have slightly lower power to match the weaker actions present in some of these rifles. Many such guns continued to use the smaller 0.318 diameter bullet until this practice was outlawed by Hermann Göring in the early 1940s in his role as chief huntsman of the Third Reich. Particular care is often taken to determine the actual caliber of such guns before firing them. Models 1889/90/91 and Experimental Model 92. After the Mauser brothers finished work on the Model 7184 in 1880, the design team set out to create a small caliber repeater that used smokeless powder. Because of setbacks brought on by Wilhelm Mauser's death, they failed to have the design completed by 1882, and the German Rifle Test Commission, Prüfungskommission, was formed. The commission preferred to create their own design. Paul Mauser created two different variations of the same rifle, one with a stock strengthened with a barrel shroud and a traditional design following the layout of the 71 series in hope he might be able to overturn the commission's decision, or at least sell his design to the Kingdom of Bavaria, which adopted its own arms. The two rifles became known as the 89 Belgian, with a barrel shroud, and the 91 Argentine, with the 71 layout, Mausers, identical in their function and feed system. The main features were the ability to use stripper clips to feed the magazine, a revolution in rate of fire, and its rimless 7.65 x 53 mm Argentine ammunition, advanced for the time. The system proved impressive at the 1884 Bavarian arms trials. Both firearms were a success, but decision-makers were not convinced that the stripper feed was superior to the en-bloc system employed by Mannlicher. In response, Mauser started small-scale production of the design in an effort to interest foreign nations, but failed to convince any of the European major powers. The Belgian attaché, however, urged his government to contact Mauser, hoping the design might give them a chance to found a domestic arms industry. The heavy-barreled Mauser with the barrel shroud resulted in the founding of arms manufacturer FN Herstal. FN could not keep up with orders, so they outsourced production to the Birmingham Small Arms Company in England. The Belgians' talks with Mauser prompted the Ottoman Empire to consider the design. In the end they ordered their own simpler variation of the 91 Argentine Mauser known as the 90 Turkish. While this was taking place, the Argentine Small Arms Commission contacted Mauser in 1886 to replace their Model 71s, since they wished to keep retraining of their armed forces to a minimum. They went for the Mauser 91. As with other early Mausers, most such arms were made by the Ludwig Loewe Company, who in 1896 joined with other manufacturers to form Deutsche Waffen und Munitions Fabriken. All variations used the same 7.65 mm round-nosed cartridge. Many parts were interchangeable, with the exception of the bayonets of the 89 and 90 91sts, the barrel shroud made the bayonet ring too wide. The 89 Mauser, rejected by Germany in 1884, entered service in 1940 with the second-line units of Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Belgium. A non-rotating Mauser claw extractor was introduced in the Model 92. Several variations of this model participated in rifle trials for the U.S. Army of that year. The Norwegian Krag Jørgensen rifle was ultimately chosen. Spanish M93. The Mauser Model 1893 is a bolt-action rifle commonly referred to as the Spanish Mauser, though the model was adopted by other countries in other calibers, most notably the Ottoman Empire. The M93 introduced a short staggered column box magazine as standard, holding 5 smokeless 7x57 mm Mauser rounds flush with the bottom of the rifle, which could be reloaded quickly by pushing a strip of rounds from the top of the open bolt. It still had only 2 locking lugs. Swedish M1894 rifle. The armies of Brazil and Sweden were issued the Model 94. The similar Model 1895 was sold to Mexico, Chile, Uruguay, China, Persia, and the South African states of Transvaal and the Orange Free State, Boers. A safety feature offered by the Model 1895 was a low shoulder at the rear of the receiver, just behind the base of the bolt handle, which would contain the bolt in the unlikely event that the front locking lugs sheared off due to excessive pressure. South African Mausers were highly effective against the British during the Second Boer War. These proved deadly at long ranges, prompting the British to design their own Mauser-inspired high-velocity cartridge and rifle. These rare Mauser carbines and rifles, especially the Model 1895, can be easily identified by the letters OVS, Orange Average State, either marked on the weapon's receiver ring and the stock directly below, or otherwise carved into the right side of the buttstock. The British pattern 1914 Enfield with a Mauser-style lug might have replaced the Lee Enfield, but the exigencies of World War I prevented this from happening. The Lee Enfield continued to see service until it was replaced by a semi-automatic weapon after World War II. The Germans had faced the US M1917 rifle during World War I, which was the pattern 14 rifle adapted to fire the U.S. 30-06 cartridge of the American M1903 Springfield rifle. Chilean Mauser Model 1895. The Mauser Model 1895 adopted as Fusil Mauser Chileno MO 1895 by Chilean forces, is a bolt-operated magazine-fed rifle using the 7x57mm Mauser cartridge. It is the first major modification of the Mauser Model 1893 and was produced by Deutsche Waffen und Munitions Fabriken, known as DWM, and Ludwig Loewe Company during the period of 1895–1900. Model 1896. On November 3, 1893, the United Kingdoms of Sweden and Norway adopted the 6.5x55mm cartridge. As a result, the Swedes chambered their new service weapons, the M/94 carbine and M/96 rifle, in this round. The rifle action was manufactured relatively unchanged from 1896 to 1944, and the M/94 carbine, M/96 rifle, M/38 short rifle, and M/41 sharpshooter models are known by collectors as Swedish Mausers. They are still sought after by military service rifle shooters and hunters. Initial production of the weapons was in Germany by Waffen Fabrik Mauser, with the remainder being manufactured under license by Sweden's state-operated Bofors Carl Gustaf factory. The M/38 short rifle was produced by Husqvarna. Additional M/38s were converted from Model 96 rifles. Swedish Steel is a term for the steel used by the German Mauser, and later by Swedish manufacturing facilities, to make the M/96 rifles. Swedish iron ore contains the proper percentages of trace elements to make good alloy steel. Thus, though lacking the industrial base necessary for mass-producing steel and iron, the Swedish steel industry developed a niche market for specialty high-strength steel alloys containing nickel, copper, and vanadium. Swedish steels were noted for their strength and corrosion resistance and were especially suited for use in tool making, cutlery, and firearms. When Mauser was contracted to fabricate the initial production runs of Swedish Mausers in Germany due to production delays, Sweden required the use of Swedish steel in the manufacturing process. The Swedish Ordnance Office continued to specify the same Swedish steel alloy in Swedish-made Mausers until the last new production M/38 barreled actions were completed in 1944. Model 1898. In 1898 the German Army purchased a Mauser design, the Model 98, which incorporated improvements introduced in earlier models. The weapon was originally chambered for the M/88 iteration of the 7.92x57mm Mauser and officially entered German service as the G98 on April 5, 1898. This remains by far the most successful of the Mauser designs, helped by the onset of two world wars that demanded vast numbers of rifles. Noticeable changes from previous Mauser rifle models included better ruptured case gas venting, better receiver metallurgy, and a larger 35.8 mm, 1.41 in, diameter receiver ring compared to previous Mauser small ring bolt action designs that had 33 mm, 1.30 in, diameter receiver rings for additional strength and safety. Mauser incorporated a third safety lug on the bolt body to protect the shooter in the event that one or more of the forward-locking lugs failed. In 1903 the 7.92x57mm Mauser S Patroni Spitzer, pointed, round was introduced. This was in response to the French adoption of a pointed and boat-tail bullet, which offered better ballistic performance. The bullet diameter was increased from 8.08 mm, 0.318 in, to 8.2 mm, 0.323 in. This improved cartridge copied the pointed tip design instead of the previous rounded nose profile. Pointed rounds give bullets a better ballistic coefficient, improving the effective range of the cartridge by decreasing aerodynamic drag. Most existing Model 98s and many Model 88s were modified to take the new round, designated 7,9 mm or S Patroni by the German military. Modified Model 88s can be identified by an S on the receiver. Due to the possibility for overpressure from the undersize barrel, the Spitzer round cannot safely be used in unmodified guns, particularly with Model 88 rifles. Paul Mauser died on May 29, 1914, before the start of World War I that August. The war caused a spike in demand for the company's rifles. The 98 carbines were sold, as well as an experimental version with a 20-round, rather than 5-round, box magazine. The extended magazine was not well received, however. A number of carbine versions known as Carabiner 98s were introduced and used in World War I. Some of these were even shorter than the later K.98K. These carbines were originally only distributed to cavalry troops, but later in the war to the special storm troop units as well. G98 Derivatives. Many military rifles derive from the M98 design. Some of these were German-made by various contractors other than Mauser. M1902, M1912, M1924 and M1936 Mexican in 7x57 mm. M1903 Turkish in 7.65 x 53 mm. M1904 and M1912 Chilean in 7x57 mm. M1912 Colombian in 7x57 mm. M1904 Portuguese in 6.5x58 mm Vergueiro. M1906 Swedish in 6.5x55 mm. M1908 Brazilian in 7x57 mm. M1908 Uruguayan in 7x57 mm produced by the Deutsche Waffen und Munitions Fabriken. M1909 Argentine in 7.65x53 mm. M1910 Serbian in 7x57 mm. M1924 Chinese in 7.92x57 mm. M1943 Spanish short, not to be confused with the M93 Spanish Mauser, in 7.92x57 mm manufactured in the Spanish arsenals. Will have La Coruna or the Spanish Air Force Eagle stamped on the top of the receiver. Virtually identical to the K98K. VZ. 98 20-seconds often made from G98 parts, rebuilt in the BRNO factory in Czechoslovakia. The Mauser 1918 Tiguer was the world's first anti-tank rifle, the first rifle designed for the sole purpose of destroying armored targets. The weapon, essentially an enlarged G98, fired 13 x 92 mm, .525 caliber, tough, tank und Flieger, tanks and aeroplanes, semi-rimmed cartridges. In May 1918, the Mauser company began mass-producing the Mauser 13 mm tank Abwehrgewehr Mod. 18 in Oberndorf am Neckar. Following the collapse of the German Empire after World War I, many countries that were using Mauser models chose to develop, assemble, or modify their own G98 action rifle designs. The most prolific of them were the Czechoslovak M1922 CZ98 and M1924 CZ-VZ.24 and the Belgian Fabrique Nationale M1924 and M1930, all in 8x57 mm. The Belgians and Czechs produced and widely exported their Mausers in various calibers throughout the 1920s and 1930s, before their production facilities were absorbed by Nazi Germany to make parts or whole rifles for the German army. Strictly speaking, these were not Mauser rifles, as they were not engineered or produced by the German company. To take advantage of the widespread and popular German single-shot 8.15 x 46 mmR cartridge for use in a military firearm, a modified Gewehr 98 referred to as a Wehrmanns Gewehr was designed. These were made primarily as single shots, some only had a wood block in the magazine space. These became the 1936 Olympic team rifles for the Germans. As the restrictions on production were increasingly ignored by the Germans in the 1930s, a new Mauser, the Mauser Standard Model, was developed from the rifle-length Carabiner 98B. It was nominally intended for export and civilian sales. While many standard model rifles were indeed exported, it was meant primarily for use by the revived German military. It rapidly evolved into the Carabiner 98 Kurs, which was adopted by Nazi Germany as the standard infantry rifle in 1935 and saw service until the end of World War II. Type A, Model B, Model K, Army Model C, Africa Model. A series of very successful hunting rifles were developed in the first decades of the 20th century. The special rifle Type A was the top-of-the-line sporting rifle of the early 20th century. The Model B, B for bucks, and Model K were sport rifles offered in many configurations. The Model C, made from 1903 to 1930, was a cheap rifle made to accommodate a range of cartridges for hunting. The Mauser Africa Model, introduced around 1904 or 1905, was used mainly by settlers in Africa. Model M and Model S. The Model M was introduced in 1914. A Model S, S for Stutzen or short, was also offered. Mauser 1925 Special Range Rifle. The 1925 Special Range Rifle was a commercial product introduced in 1925 and sold in the United States. It was intended for high-accuracy range shooting. The company also produced a .22 caliber training rifle during this time frame. Carabiner 98K. The Carabiner 98K Mauser, often abbreviated K98K or Kar 98K, adopted in the mid-1930s, became the most common infantry rifle in service in the German Army during World War II. The design was developed from the Carabiner 98B, one of the carbines developed from the Model 1898. The K98K was first adopted by the Wehrmacht in 1935 as their standard issue rifle, with many older versions being converted and shortened. Mauser M1916. The Mauser M1916, or Mauser Selbstlade-Karabiner, self-loading carbine, was a semi-automatic rifle that used a delayed blowback mechanism and fed from 25-round detachable magazine. The process of developing a semi-automatic rifle cost Paul Mauser an eye when a prototype suffered an out of battery.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.